Welcome back, everyone. Haven't done a tip video in a long time, so let's go super quick. How to make an MSR Whisperlite stove simmer. Let's go. Okay, so you've got your Whisperlite. It does great for you. You're using it on trips, but you want to crank up your skill set, the things that you're cooking. And in order to do that, you need to make it simmer, which the Whisperlite doesn't really have any way to control the flame. And so the way that a Whisperlite works is open the valve on your pressurized fuel canister. It forces fuel through the fuel line up into this fuel loop and then down into the priming cup. You get the priming cup with just a little bit of fuel in it. Close the valve on the fuel bottle and then light the fuel in the priming cup. That then engulfs the stove in flame, which heats the fuel line. And then just as the fuel is about to burn out, you reopen the valve on the fuel bottle. Fresh fuel comes through the fuel line, hits this superheated coil of fuel line. The fuel vaporizes, and then it burns the fuel as a gas. So that is how your Whisperlite is working. And we need to know that because what we're going to do is sort of short circuit it to make it do what we need it to do. We're going to go through that whole priming process. We're going to get the stove up and burning the way that it should. We're going to turn the stove off by closing the valve, let it finish out its fuel, blow it out, and then let it finish its fuel, let it vent. Then pick the whole stove and fuel bottle up, and what we're going to do is vent the pressure out of the bottle. So here's the fuel bottle, here's the fuel pump. We're going to just crack this whole thing open and let it vent pressure just like that, and then close it. And then we can reopen the fuel valve here, which is going to force fuel back through the line. But this is still superheated because it was just running. So it'll start running, but at very low pressure. And so you'll just get a little bit of a spurting flame, not creating soot, but a little bit of a flame, which is perfect for simmering. And you may have to, down the road, give it a pump or two just to keep enough pressure in the system so that it's feeding a little bit of fuel. That's essentially what we want to do, is sort of cheat the system, prime the stove, vent the pressure, let the fuel back through so that it's running on low pressure. Now let's see how to actually do that. Okay, now suppose you want to simmer with this stove. I need to stress, don't try this on your own. MSR says not to do this, but this is a method that is floating around out there that I want people to see. So if you're going to do this, just be super careful. I'm going to turn the stove off and blow it out. Going to let the gas escape. Then I'm going to pick the whole stove up and I'm going to crack the bottle open to depressurize it. I left a little bit of pressure in there, and then I'm going to reopen the valve. And that's a simmer. And it's hard to see because there's a lot of light here, but that is a simmering Whisperlite. So now I put the pot on it and just sort of let water or whatever it is I'm cooking simmer. I don't know why I would simmer water, I guess soup, but that's a simmering Whisperlite. And then to turn it off, close the valve, blow it out. Okay, so that's your tip for how to get a Whisperlite to simmer. Again, don't do it. MSR says not to do it, but a lot of people do it. So I wanted you to have the option of making that call. As an aside, I would say some people complain like, well, why would you go to the trouble of, breaking the rules to make that stove simmer? Why not just buy a stove that simmers? MSR makes two other stoves that simmer beautifully, liquid fuel stoves, I should say, that simmer beautifully. The XGK and the Dragonfly. Both of them are way heavier. The Dragonfly is amazing for cooking. It's got a really big pot support. You can really cook a lot of food for a lot of people. And if I were going with like a group of 5 or 6 people, I would bring that stove. But the Whisperlite is an absolute killer in terms of weight and space compared to those two. Interestingly, there was a version of the Whisperlite called the Simmerlite, which was on the market for a few years, which they did away with because it simmered better, but still not great. So that's how come we have to sort of do a workaround to get this stove to simmer. Another good tip, if you're not using the Whisperlite, if you are using freeze-dried, get yourself a long-handled spork or spoon so that you can get to the bottom of the bag without getting your hand in there. So that's 2 tips for the price of 1. How to make your Whisperlite simmer, and if you're not using a Whisperlite, you're using freeze-dried, get yourself a long-handled spork. If you want more tip videos like this, leave a comment down below, hit like, hit subscribe. I'll see you outside.